Hey everybody, welcome back to the LBSC TICH project. Just playing around with the boiler, setting it in position and doing a little imagining about what the finished product is going to look like. As you may recall, this boiler came with a set of parts that I got from a gentleman on the Chasky group, and it's very cool. It's probably made in England and very beautiful, very small but powerful. This is the large boiler for the TICH. It's fun to look at and fun to think about finishing this thing. In this week's episode, though, I'll show you the water pump and the lines that I made for it and a testing of the pump. I just tested the pump a few minutes ago, and I look like a monk with this thing there, don't I? It's kind of cool out here in the workshop again tonight. But anyway, I tested the pump, and it tests out good. So thank you again to the subscriber that mentioned the idea of doing that before I work on the cylinders and getting this thing running on air. So this will be a short update, short episode. If you stay tuned, I'll show you the making of the lines and point out some important do's and don'ts. I did make a mistake in forming the tubes, and you'll see that, and you'll see the success at the end. So thanks everybody for all the great questions and suggestions and thumbs up. I do appreciate it. It's very motivating to see your comments, and I appreciate that, and I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Everybody, thank you, and have a great week. We'll see you shortly. Okay, I've marked out the spots where the different pipes need to go to, and I bent up some templates using some wire rod, and I started cutting. It's kind of hard to see over here, but right here is the return line that will go to the pump. It's an 1/8 inch copper. It'll go to the bypass valve, from the pump to the bypass valve. And I started to bend up the supply line from the 5/32 inch copper. Got a little bit ahead of myself. I forgot that I needed to anneal it first, so it basically ruined this chunk of copper. And anyway, I just heated up another piece of 5/32 inch copper, got it cherry red, and dunked it. So hopefully that will bend a little easier. I'll bring you back and show you how that works. Okay, that worked a lot better, just heating the copper and annealing it like that. You can see it compresses a little bit. I use this tubing bender. I use the center portion of the small tubing bender here, and I think that'll be adequate. I can always remake this if I have to, but working with these copper lines is a lot different from working with the soft copper like you get from plumbing. While I'm showing over here, also you'll notice that I've got some graphite packing. I cut a small piece, about 1.5 inch piece of just one strand of the graphite. It's a square thing and it goes into 4 strands. So I cut one piece of this. Here you can see the part I cut off, and I looped it around the pump after I unscrewed the packing nut, pushed the packing nut back a little bit, put the 1.5 loop of packing in there, so we'll have a little packing in the pump to test. Alright, let me show you a couple things. Here are the little templates that I made up with thick copper wire. It's kind of like the wire they use to wire a house, and it makes a very good design template. So this is the one, it's got a C on it. That's the one that goes to the clack, or the valve on the side of the boiler. This is the S, so that's the supply line, and you can see I made marks where I was going to make where I made the bends. And this is the 1/8 inch copper return line that goes to the bypass valve, the B. And I'll show you in a little bit how I mocked up the locations, or estimated the locations. Obviously I don't know where all those things are yet. And a couple of tools I used this is a tubing bender. It's kind of hilarious that they call it a tumbling bender, but I got that at Harbor Freight, obviously. Then for cutting the tubing, this is nice for small places and smaller diameter tubing. So I use that one, and I've got a bigger, nicer one like a conventional plumber would use. This is a brand name. I forget what it is though. Yeah, here it is. It's on the inside. I can't read that. But it's a heavy duty brand one. This is for deburring the inside of pipe, like copper pipe for your house. And here is the other bender that I used for some of the trickier bends. I really like this bender. I use this a lot on my larger locomotive as well, and pretty handy piece of gear. Alright, here's what I meant by the mock-up. As you can see, I put there's a little strap across the chassis and the little block that holds the smoke box in place, and I just loosely placed the boiler in a rough position for where it's going to go. Obviously that's not nearly the exact, but it was close enough to approximate the place where the clack will be, is what LBSC calls it, the valve that goes in to supply water out from the top of the pump to the right hand clack. This is the supply line here, so the tank will be back here somewhere, and this is the supply line, and I've got it rigged up with a little temporary thing to test. I'll probably test it tomorrow. I need to clean this out and get some clean water, but this is the same test device that I used to test the tender valves in the big locomotive, so handy thing to have. So water supply, and then this is the one that was marked B down here. That's for the boiler, the bypass valve, which is actually, the valve itself will be located right behind the boiler on the right hand side. So that's the approximate location, and that's the little mock-up that I was able to do to figure out the rough locations of those pieces. Okay, I've got the little water bottle on a stand, adding water. You can see it in the tube on its way to the pump. Alright, that should be enough. And it's coming out the top here, so I got plenty in there. Let's see how the pump works. Oh yeah. Alright, I don't know if you can see this in the video, but if you look carefully, you can see water coming out of the front tube, and it's coming out of the back tube as well. Let's try locking off. Look at that. Alright, well, you can see it coming out of the bypass tube hole, and right side of the front. Alright, very good. Well, I'm making quite a mess with excess water. I don't have a way to capture it here, so I'm going to disconnect this and put it back in the supply. But alright, the pump works. I'm very happy about that. I'll probably have to redo, may or may not have to redo the front line here. I'll stop the video and I'll show you the overall arrangement here in just a second. Alright, that was fun watching the little test here. So as you can see, I just have the chassis up on some blocks, the horn blocks, a 4x4 here and two 2x4s in the front, same difference. And we have the water supply coming into the supply tube via my little tin can setup here, and a water drinking bottle. So I'll pour that back so we contain some of the mess. Anyway, very happy about that. And the pipes, what I was saying is, I went ahead and used the front pipe that I kind of messed up because I didn't anneal that one first before I bent it. What I did after I made the other ones and silver soldered them, then I took that one and I did anneal it, and then I carefully bent it just to give us the shape there that we could test the operation. So I may have to redo that front one, but I think the back ones will be fine, and I'm really excited that it works. Sorry about the erratic camera work there. Alright, I took the pipes off and ran the pump through a few times and ran it back and forth just a little bit just to pump out any residual water, and I'll leave it up on the blocks and let it dry, and I'll just be able to manipulate it a little bit like this. So anyway, really happy with how that came out. I think this will be the last segment. This will be an abbreviated segment, and after this I will start working on all the cylinder stuff over there, so I'll bring you up to speed on that. Let me show you how nicely the little copper cones came with the silver soldering. This is one of the 5/32 inch supply lines with a copper cone on a copper tube and a 5/16 inch nut. Actually, that was the front. This is the supply line. Silver soldered the copper cone on the end there. And here's the eighth inch copper bypass valve line. The cones on the 1/8 inch, since there's more material there, they definitely look a lot more like an actual cone. The ones on the 5/32 don't really look like much, but the hardware is small, and that's kind of appealing, especially as cramped as the space is in there.